Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're in the world, and welcome to today's webinar, Energy and Utilities Outlook Africa, Making Power Available and Viable for Community. And this webinar is broadcast by Informa. I'm John Van Zulen, and I'll be your moderator today. And before we delve into the topic, I just have a few announcements before we begin. This webinar is designed to be interactive. So the dock of widgets at the bottom of your screen will allow you to learn about today's webinar speakers. Also download some resources and of course share the webinar via social media. Additionally, and I'm sure you're very used to this, there is a Q&A button, and please take any time during the webinar and the presentations to submit your questions, and we will then use these questions at the end of the webinar today during the Q&A session. Towards the end of the webinar, we will also ask you to complete a short survey. This survey can be found at the right-hand side on your screen. Just take a few minutes, please, to fill this out before leaving today, because this will help the organizer to collect your feedback and also to make sure that these programs and the webinars are always being improved for future events. Lastly, if you are experiencing some technical problems, you can also click on the help widget, and this one is at the bottom of your screen. Or you can also type your question in the Q&A section, and somebody from the technical support team will be glad to assist you on a one-on-one, case-by-case basis. So that's enough for housekeeping today. Let's delve into the topic. As I said, making power available and viable to communities with a special focus on Africa. We have a great panel of panelists today. Great set of panelists. We are unfortunately experiencing some technical issues, and hopefully all of our speakers will be able to join us, but for now we already have a few with us. I will let them introduce themselves in a later section of this webinar, but you can already familiarize yourself with who they are and a little bit of their background on this slide. Before we go into specific questions about today's topic, I would like to ask Nopenyo Dabla from IRENA to tell us a little bit more about insights that has been developed by IRENA on this specific topic, and really setting the stage for today's discussion. Nopenyo, over to you.
All right, thank you, John, and hi, and good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, or depending on wherever you are. So, yeah, it's my pleasure to be here. I'm Nopenyo Dabla. I am Associate Program Officer for the Sub-Saharan Africa region at IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, based out in Abu Dhabi. And talking about Africa, and also the progress of how to make power available to all communities and viable to all communities in the continent, clearly really encompasses the role and the potential for the country, so for the region, to uptake renewable energy. And it's technology that we have seen has been growing quite a lot over the past decade or so in Africa. I mean, in 2009, sorry, we were about 28 gigawatts of installed capacity of all renewable energy technologies combined to about 50 gigawatts today, which is a bit more than 75% increase over the past 10 years. And also now we start seeing as well that there is a lot of inclusion of renewable energy in national, regional, continental master plans and policies and strategies, which kind of shows there's quite a lot of room for renewables in the continent. I mean, quite an example of a regional sort of master plans would be the Ecowas master plan, or the West African Power Master Plan, as it's also known as, is its outlook, I mean, its medium-term outlook to 2029, where they plan to have about 52% of the installed capacity being from renewables, including hydro. But again, that's where we're going, given the costs, the declining cost trends of the technology, and also the rising demand that we'll be seeing in Africa over the coming decades. Just an example of bigger countries or bigger economies such as Nigeria, where we foresee about 10%, so 9.5 to be correct, percent of increase in peak load by 2030. So there is room, and there is renewables slowly are becoming the new normal, as we would say, but not yet. I mean, there's still quite a lot of fossil fuels being on the continent, but also now we need to put in place the right enabling frameworks for renewables to pick up. But at the same time, public investment, investment in renewables also has to be there, and Africa, unfortunately, I mean, is the continent where you see quite a bigger share of increase of public investment for renewables. I mean, against a global percentage of about 16%, Africa, we can go to up to 34% of public investment in renewables, coming from public funds. So we just really highlights the need that we have. We need to see more private sector or private actors being included. So, I mean, the renewable energy transition in Africa being, spearheaded by the bigger countries, as we know, the bigger economies such as South Africa, Ethiopia, Morocco, or Egypt. But then we also see that in some of the smaller countries such as Senegal, also Rwanda, there is this drive, and more private sector actors coming in, but then there needs to be a bigger push. In order to support that, so IRENA has its regional approach towards the continent based on sub-regional, let's say, groupings, where we work on Eastern Southern Africa, on the Africa Clean Energy Corridor, which aims to promote cross-border trade of electricity using the existing power pools, and doing the same thing in West Africa through the West Africa Clean Energy Corridor, working together with the regional power pool and also the regional renewable energy institutions. Of course, they also need to promote small scale and access issues. So the entrepreneurship facility that we're working on in West Africa, and now in Southern Africa, are also helping with that. And one new region where has traditionally had quite a big share of renewables, but mainly hydro in Central Africa, and now there's a nascent push and drive for more action there when it comes to other renewables, and so we're collaborating together at regional level as well. But then also to promote renewables, as I was explaining earlier, they actually needs to be, the enabling environment has to be correct, has to be right. And so our national areas of work in Africa encompass something we like to call the Renewables Readiness Assessment. We've conducted them about 15 of them across African countries. I hope you can actually see the country names there. And the aim of the Renewable Readiness Assessment, or the RRA to be quick, is pretty much to identify what are the key bottlenecks, be it institutional, technical, regulatory, or policy. What are those bottlenecks that will need to be addressed in order to increase the uptake of renewables in the countries? And we will see from the pie chart there that quite a lot of the areas are quite diverse. But then we have policy and strategy being quite a big component of things that need to be addressed for renewables to pick up. But then we have areas such as financing and investment, or also the legal and regulatory aspects that are also important. And so also going by between now and 2030, I mean, Africa has a big access issue, which is also not a secret to anyone. And currently we have, there are about 600 million people worldwide who don't have access to electricity, and about 70% of them live in Africa. And I think the number is 548 million living in Africa. And how do we have enough to actually, or are we putting enough effort to actually make sure everybody has access by 2030? And by the current estimates, not. there will be about 789 million are people who don't have access today, and there will be 620 million globally by 2030 who don't have access. And if you keep the 70% share and look at it, there'll still be quite a big number if things don't improve in Africa. So about on the chart in the middle, you can see the list of countries in terms of the access deficit. The top 20 countries in worldwide, and 14 of them are from Africa. That might paint a bleak picture, but then you have to see also that on the other chart, on the right, the countries where you have a bigger increase every year in terms of access, I mean, out of the 20, 10 are also in Africa. So there is an opportunity there to actually do some good progress. And this good progress is actually coming from decentralized technologies, off-grid technologies, especially in countries in East Africa, Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, or Tanzania, which have also been using those technologies to power access to electricity, and all, of course, based on renewables. To move forward, I just want to point you out to one of the publications we had released earlier this year, which is actually a yearly report, but for this year is on the tracking of the progress towards meeting SDG 7, which is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 7 to provide clean and affordable electricity by 2030. And some of the recommendations that we see moving forward in order to actually achieve those objectives have been, in the background of all the things I've said before up to this point. I mean, there needs to be integrated planning, both taking into consideration both grid improvements, so to increase access on grid-connected areas, but also using on-grid and off-grid technologies to promote them in a very planned and coordinated manner. As example, we've seen in some countries such as Tanzania or Togo, which have also looked even beyond just the provision of power, but looking into how to make the whole value chain adequate for access to be reached by 2030. At the same time, we also need to look at the policy frameworks and make sure that the regulations are in order, and at country level, strong, clear institutional arrangements to make sure that roles are not duplicated or omitted, and so make sure that the private sector and investors find the good environment for them to actually make their investment. Also, one would need to look into the technology side of things and how to make innovative business and technology models to reach the unserved population. And for that, we have quite a lot of solutions at our disposal, which are, of course, include energy efficiency, but also digitalization, and also the issue, the point related to storage, which costs have been declining, but then provide quite strong opportunity for the Africa power system to actually respond to the needs of the economy. But also, I mean, on top of that, of course, we have to leverage private investment. Like I was mentioning earlier, private investment in Africa is probably has the lowest ratio globally, and we need to start to be able to actually find ways to actually use public funding to leverage more private investment in the continent. But while all that is being done, of course, it has to be done in a pro-poor manner, looking into the unserved population and make sure that nobody is left behind, but also gender aspect. The gender aspect has to be quite strongly put in there. But also, we also need to look at looking beyond just the availability of power. Also need to look at the productive use of power. And especially when you look at the current situation of COVID context, it is important to see that healthcare is an area that is very much overlooked sometimes. I think it's only 1 in 4 healthcare in rural areas in Africa have access to electricity. And those are areas where effort needs to go as well. But then moving quickly, also now IRENA is just looking at IRENA interventions on the energy access side. Well, in West Africa, we started working on, back in our first engagement there was on promoting the solar PV market in West Africa, which is a program that aimed, that had three components, looking at financial institutions on one side, entrepreneurs, and also the policy makers on the second and third side. And this has kind of spilled off into the Ecowas Entrepreneurship Facility, which I mentioned earlier, and also which has now inspired the establishment of the SADC Entrepreneurship Facility in Southern Africa. And in the Ecowas, we're also working quite closely with the regional institution, the Ecowas Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, ECRI, to design a sort of certification for solar PV installers or across the region, which will be able to allow them to actually move quickly across the region and deploy their skills where it's needed. And now we also are working on healthcare, which I was mentioning earlier. We're working now with Burkina Faso on kind of assessing the solutions that are available for the country to power the rural health centers with renewable energy. And this assessment going on, which we want to expand to other countries as well. So, yeah, before moving on to just to the last slide, where in general covers our activities across the region. I've mentioned the renewable energy assessments, but then also quite a lot of capacity building is being done now on planning and operation of power grids with higher shares of variable renewable energy, and also on development of renewable energy PPAs, which are very important to actually set this enabling framework that we think will be very important for the private sector to come in. And of course, data being quite important is also an area we're looking at. But on the analytical side of our work, we do regional and national analysis that have inspired quite regional plans in the region themselves. The Ecowas master plan that I was mentioning earlier also drew quite a lot from some of the work we've done in West Africa, but then grid stability studies and regulatory support have been also quite important in our intervention in Africa. So yeah, just to point out quite some publications down there that we can find on IRENA's website, which are our outlook, our global renewable outlook, which looks at each sub-regions globally and what potential for them to deploy renewables by 2050. But before closing, I think one clear area where action is also needed now is the national determined contributions under the Paris Agreement, which should be guiding our intervention when it comes to deploying further renewables across the continent. And IRENA has been strongly engaged on that front, supporting close to 15 countries in Africa at the moment for the revision and also supporting the implementation of those NDCs in the coming years. So yeah, so I'll be stopping here for now, and thank you very much for the time given to me to go over those presentations quickly. And yeah, please, John, you can take the lead again for discussions, and I welcome further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nopenyo. It's always a difficult task to be the first one to jump into such a wide topic, but I think you've done an amazing job at giving us like the overall continental picture, if there is if that at all is possible, because we know that there is no one Africa, but a multitude of different countries and different realities on the field. But definitely you've shared a lot of great insights and opened up the stage for further questions. And that's actually what I would like to do now with Engineer Manda and Mr. Ali Bouka, if they could give us a slightly more regional point of view on what kind of opportunities and challenges that regional and international companies are confronted with in the energy and utility sector. And maybe we can start with Engineer Mando, who is based in Kenya. Engineer, if you could just briefly introduce yourself and your work, and then tell us a bit more about what you see as the key opportunities and challenges for local but also international companies in this field. Engineer Mando, are you with us? Okay, well, maybe we have a slight issue on the audio side with Engineer Mando. Maybe we can switch first to Mr. Ali Bukar, who is based in Nigeria. And hopefully Mr. Bukar can tell us a little bit more about the specific situation in Nigeria and maybe also wider in West Africa.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Go ahead. Thank you very much. My name is Ali Bukar Ahmad. I'm the Assistant General Manager, Regulation, Compliance, and Market Development, Transmission Company of Nigeria. I've been working with the 14 West African countries on the development and cross-border electric trade within West Africa. Before now, there were sort of electricity cross-border trade, but they were basically based on regional solidarity. Nigeria was transporting energy to Niger Republic, to Benin Republic, and Togo, but they were all signed based on regional solidarity. The agreements did not take the shape of actual cross-border trade with an element of electricity marketing in them. And 19, the West African market was launched. But before the West African market, the West African countries under WAP, West African Powerful, came off with a development plan, in which all the 15 West African countries are going to be connected together so that every country will buy electricity from every other country, because the energy resources in West Africa are not evenly distributed. That is one. Two, there is a very high level of poverty in West Africa. Three, electricity accessibility in countries like Burkina Faso was very, very low at that time. I think at this stage, still the electricity access to electricity in Burkina Faso is no more than 25%. It means you have about 75% deficit in places like Burkina Faso. The number of generation in West Africa is about 58,000 gigawatt hour. And out of that 58,000 gigawatt hour, the three exporting electricity countries, Nigeria, Ghana, and Ivory Coast, have about 83% of that power, generation and consumption. And even within these three countries, Nigeria was about 52% of the population. They have about 50% of that consumption. So we have a very pressing issues of lack of accessibility, issues of lack of infrastructure, issues of lack of cohesion within the countries. So at present, 9 countries are being connected. 9 countries are connected. What is left is the draft of the regional grid code, but already we have the market that is drafted and enforced, the market procedure, regional market procedure that is drafted and enforced. We have synchronized the frequencies and the voltages, because some of the countries were transmitting before this time at 125 kilovolts, others 330, like in Nigeria, we have 330 kilovolts and 132. And we harmonize all these technical indices so that have an easy flow of electricity. So the market was launched in 2018, but still we are at the first stage of the regional market because the grandfather's agreement I said earlier on, agreement that were signed regional solidarity without following any procedure for cross-border electricity trade are now being transformed into bilateral agreement. And I think the window is opening wide so that NIPPs, power producers, can come in and they can trade with any other generator or transmitter in any other country. But at present, the level of exchange is at the transmission level now. We are trying to see that anybody that is trying to do business with any other must be its own regulatory commission is his own country. One, he must be doing business with his own transmission company, because it's only through this transmission that you will get these countries connected. So the problems we are facing at present is that all these 15 countries are at different levels of proliferation. Countries like Nigeria, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire, they are already ahead of all other countries. They have unbundled completely. You have independent generation stations. You have independent distribution stations. But in Nigeria, the transmission company is still under the control of the federal government. In Ghana, it's the same. If you go to countries like Niger, everything is under the control of government. So you find it difficult to do business, to draft a bilateral agreement with any other person but government. Secondly, some of these countries, or most of the countries, and I think at this level is only Nigeria, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire that have their national grid code. Countries, apart from these three countries, I don't think there is any other country in West Africa with a national grid code or with a national market rules. So, but last year, I think the Niger Republic have drafted a regional grid code, but it's still to be adopted.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, the sad problem is, hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
I was going to, yes, I was going to thank you for this. So we understand that the situation in West African countries are very, very different. This being said, there's a big opportunity, and maybe we can go more into the details for subsequent questions. I don't want you to reveal everything now on the first question, and maybe I can call on Engineer Mandu to also give his point of view on what is going on the other side of the continent, on the eastern side. Engineer Mandu, are you with us? Hello? Well, he was with us just a few moments ago, but it seems we still have lost him. Then, no problem about this. Maybe Niraj, who is also with us from Frost & Sullivan. Maybe you can bring me on the spot here, but maybe you can jump in, and thanks to your wide work across the entire continent, maybe you can share a bit of insights about the eastern region of Africa and what are the main challenges and opportunities there.
All right. Thank you so much, John. I hope my voice is audible to you.
Come again?
I hope you can hear me clearly. Am I audible?
Yes, 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 yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, John. So, yes, my name is Neeraj, and I work as a consultant with Frost & Sullivan. And we basically track developments across the renewable energy space, as well as the power industry, not only in Africa, but also in the Middle East region. So this is actually a very pertinent question that you have put forth here, where we try to understand what are the challenges that private investors specifically see when it comes to investing or doing business in the African continent. So I would speak largely from a sub-Saharan African perspective. So when we heard the opening session, we had a focus on where electricity accessibility is a concern. But then the second important aspect that also needs attention is the availability of reliable electricity, something that has been a challenge for major African nations. So now when we talk about the availability of electricity, this also means availability of electricity at a cost that is sustainable for businesses as well as industries there. So just to give a very quick statistics, there are estimates that peg the opportunity or the business that is lost because of load shedding and power outages to be as high as 2% of a country's GDP. Now, what needs to be a key focus for even the government institutions, the regulatory authorities going forward, is not only to focus on having more of renewable capacity coming into the grid, but also looking at expanding transmission infrastructure. Now, that is one area that has been lacking focus or investment when it comes to entire Africa as a region. So yes, transmission is something that needs to get focus. And also, there needs to be a growing focus on regulation and policy that will help in integrating distributed energy resources through standalone systems or even microgrids that can meet or help in attaining the last mile connectivity for electrical connections. So yes, regulation and policy is one aspect that needs to be understood and addressed clearly. In addition to that, as we also heard from the Nigerian perspective, there is a growing need for utilities to operate independently. So as of now, when we look at the entire sub-Saharan African region, we see that competition is highly restricted. So there is a need to focus on improving competition so that allows private sector participants in the generation and the distribution space as well. Now, if you look at East Africa specifically, yes, Kenya is a leading example when we focus on development of microgrids. We understand that there are close to 120 microgrids that are under development in Kenya specifically. And Kenya also has taken the lead in allowing private players to set up their own micro utilities in attaining rural electrification objectives. So yes, that is a good start when we look at Kenya as a perspective. But speaking from a Frost & Sullivan perspective, basis our analysis, we see that there's a growing need for technology to be a part of the African landscape. So talking about smart grids, talking about net metering technologies, as well as talking about policies that would help in tariff restructuring, ensuring that there's a cost reflectivity in tariff, as well as an effective framework for operation of micro utilities. So in our opinion, these are some of the aspects that would play a key role in ensuring electricity access to most of the communities that are currently located beyond the grid. And just to add to one aspect that is becoming even critical with these COVID times is the need for developing a local supply chain. So as we see electricity demand growing, we also see the demand for renewable energy technologies increasing. What that only means is the supply chain has to be robust. And that also necessitates local governments, institutions to invest in facilities that can localize some of the supply chains, which will not only ensure a security of supply, but would also ensure economic development and prosperity for some of the communities that are participating in these programs. So yes, to just summarize everything, East Africa, in addition to South Africa, has been taking the lead in developing some of the programs, but a lot needs to be done on the funding and policy aspect to ensure that electricity is made accessible to all.
Thank you very much, Neeraj. Lots of great insights there. the need for expanding infrastructure, transmission infrastructure, the possibility of jumping into to smart grid and really taking advantage of the latest technologies, the importance of cost-reflective prices, definitely all important topics. There is maybe one that really caught my attention more than the other ones. You told us about the development of more decentralized generation and mostly through renewable energy, solar and storage. I would like to do a round of get the round of opinions about this situation and this evolution. We all know that expanding the grids is a very lengthy and very costly thing to do. Many countries have not been able to develop it as fast as required. And at the same time, we see decentralized renewable energy generation decreasing in costs every day and becoming more and more cost affordable, let's say. I would like to have your opinion, and maybe I'll start with Nopenyo on this one. I would like to have your opinion on how do you see this? Is it a conflict between transmission or decentralized renewable energy, or is it actually a combination of forces, and can they be actually complementary maybe?
Sorry, John, this is Nicholas.
Nicholas, you're back with us. Very good news. I will get back to you right after Nopenyo.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thanks, John, for the question. So in my opinion, it's definitely not a conflict. It's actually very complementary. I mean, when you see exactly, you've explained the context, is grid extension tends to be very lengthy and very cost demanding. And in many Arab countries where you have, giving the democratic pattern, rural electrification access through decentralized technologies is actually what makes sense, what makes economic sense. But at national level, it needs to be, all that needs to be part of a clear planning process, which makes sure that there's no conflict later on, because sometimes you don't have, the utilities, have their own expansion plans, which are very much, done in silo, not really consulting other parties or such as the rural education agencies that we have in many countries. And you see some conflict in where the grid arrives and where some other developer has been awarded a contract to develop a mini grid. So I think that needs to be worked out clearly at country level on the planning side. But otherwise, it definitely is complementary in order to actually make sure that the people far from the grid are also economically empowered, and that schools, hospitals, and the like are also made available to the population.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Nicholas, on your side, how do you see the role of decentralized renewable energy?
Thank you. Nopenyo said in ISCA, it is also complementary in that the assessment for the deployment of some of these decentralized systems is based on the distance from the nearest lines. So you realize that the government find it much easier to do some decentralized systems, some mini grids, some small hydro somewhere, some mini hydros or wind somewhere. Because if they look at the cost of extending the transmission line there and looking at even the uptake, the amount of energy being consumed by particular regions is so small. So in that case, I think East African countries are thinking on how to do some mini grids. But now, of course, as we say, the challenge is to look forward and ask ourselves what we'll do when it comes to the grid, when the grid extends and gets to some of these areas, as Nopenyo had highlighted. So we need a very clear plan on how to ensure that our systems which are deployed now are grid friendly, and the transmission lines to come then can be plugged in and adapt into the generations which we already have, so that we ensure we maximize on already the resources which have been invested for the deployment of some of these services. So that is my take when it comes to decentralized systems.
Thank you very much. Same question to Ali. On your side in Nigeria and in the wider West African region, how do you see this collaboration between extending the grid versus the multiplication of decentralized power generation? Ali Bukar, are you still with us? Okay, well, I think we might have lost Ali for a little bit. No worries at all. Yeah, maybe I'll jump back to Niraj then, as we try to get back Ali. Niraj, I would like to ask you a more complicated question here. If you could, delve into the importance of this decentralized generation, especially in the light of all the developments that are currently being witnessed with new, better and cheaper storage solutions. It's really quite amazing what we have been witnessing, and I'm sure you have some interesting insights to share on this topic.
No, certainly, John. So I think one of the most important aspects that has actually made renewable energy technologies, and for that matter, a decentralized solution, viable in today's world is the cost reduction that is happening. So at this point of time, even if we look at some of the tariffs that have been achieved worldwide for, say, your solar PV grid scale plants, they are as comparable or even lower than what we have received for, say, some of the coal-based utilities as well. So technology has advanced to a level where solar and wind solutions are no longer costly. Yes, there is an aspect of battery storage that is still on the higher side, but costs are decreasing at a significant pace. And over the next 3 to 4 years, we see the cost of lithium-ion batteries specifically going to as low as $100 or even lower for that matter. Now, what is interesting to see out here is, the development around electric mobility is something that is also bringing down battery costs, and it is in turn benefiting stationary storage that is a critical aspect for decentralized systems. So yes, decentralized systems combined with battery technologies that are witnessing a sharp decline in costs, and something that we're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years is certainly going to drive the market for these technologies. And in Africa, where expansion of transmission networks still remains a challenge, investment remains a challenge, it is a very good testing ground for some of the technologies like microgrids and other hybrid systems that can integrate battery energy storage systems as well. And what would also be interesting is, the focus has to shift slightly from providing electricity to households alone, but then looking at microgrids and systems like those that can help develop local businesses and economies as well. So there has to be a cohesiveness between providing electricity and also providing electricity for economic upliftment. So that would be my take on it.
Yes, you're completely right. I mean, in many locations, it's not just about bringing electricity, but it's really about enabling an entire economic environment, and that also needs to be taken into account indeed. Thank you very much. We are slightly approaching the end of this session, so if you have any question, I invite you once again to submit those questions through the Q&A box. Don't be shy. Please feel free to submit any question that may be crossing your mind, and we'll be happy to cover those in the last section of this webinar today. Before we do so, I have a few other questions. We heard from Napenio in the beginning of this webinar today about projections by 2030 that it may still not be totally possible to reach everybody and give electricity access to everybody. I would like to also ask Engineer Mando and Niraj again to share also their opinion about this. Is this situation really inevitable?
Hello.
Are there maybe some solutions to improve those numbers? And yes, just share your opinion on this universal electricity access. And we can start with Engineer Mando.
Thank you very much, John. Now, it is very possible to implement and achieve the objectives we have as countries to ensure that we provide a clean and sustainable energy to our communities. And this can easily be done through the deployment of mini grids in those areas which are far away from the main grids. As we have seen, for example, if you look at Kenya, there was a very big change between 2012 and 2014 when the new government came into power. We had energy access of around 37%, and now we are talking about 75% energy access. So you can see within a span of 7 years, we have managed a gap bigger than what has been done for the other years. So it is very possible. And of course, with the new technologies coming in and the efficiency of the systems, especially the solar, and the cost also coming down, I think it's something we don't need to lose sight of, and we need to maintain that focus. Especially we have regulatory bodies which are taking care of that, and we have the capacity buildings. Like in Kenya, we are now going to develop a capacity building center, which we are going to call it MGA, Mini Grid Academy. And in this academy, we are going to train specialists on how to develop mini grids and how to maintain them. This is basically because currently we are having a Kenya off-grid solar access project, which we are targeting to do over 120 mini grids. And these mini grids are targeting the 14 counties which are underserved. So this tells you at the end of the next 5 years, now that currently we are at 75, then we might be at around 95% of the energy access, and our people can enjoy some of these resources. Yes, we say we have a lot of hydropower, and we have a lot of geothermal coming into play. We have wind into play, but still we need to consider the aspect of the distances we have to transfer these powers, the energy from the main plants to these communities. And most of these communities, if you look at the kind of settlement, is very scarce, unlike the centralized system, settlement in the cities. And the demand is low, as we said. So we have to do a lot of careful planning and feasibility studies to prioritize the regions for implementation of some of these projects. So I think this is something also happening in Rwanda and Tanzania and Uganda. Of course, we also need to look at the regional interconnections, as currently we know Kenya is connected to Uganda, and we are looking forward to have the East African power pool come into play, where we shall have Ethiopia, we shall have Egypt, and we can connect also to the South African power pool, the SAP. So with that, I think we'll be having the ability to give our people more access to energy, and we'll have a lot of it. So I think it's something the policymakers are working hard to ensure that is delivered.
Thank you. Some very encouraging words there about the great progress in terms of electrification rates in Kenya. I would like to ask the same question to Mr. Ali, to share some thoughts about this target of universal access to by 2030. I mean, we've heard some numbers from Lupenyo in the beginning of the presentation. Do you think there are ways that things can be done faster, better, or is this number still inevitable for you? Please, happy to hear your thoughts about how we can improve electricity access rates in West Africa. Mr. Ali?
Hello?
Yes, you are with us. Great. We can hear you.
Hello?
Well, I will ask the technical team to check on Mr. Ali's connection and let me know when we can hear him again. No worries, we will keep this question for later on. I have a few questions from the audience to finish this webinar today. Yes. First question is, are governments doing enough to make Africa an attractive place for foreign investors? I mean, that goes hand in hand with the topic of regulatory change that we have also already covered. But I'd like to get your opinion on, is this indeed enough? Is every country going in the right direction? We've seen recently, for example, some countries having really totally diverging approaches to VAT on solar, between Senegal, for example, and Kenya. Maybe we can start on this topic with Engineer Mandu again. Do you think enough is being done, or do you still wait for a second or maybe third wave of real hard policy decisions to support energy access?
So
Hello,
thank you very much. I think.
Hello.
African countries have one challenge, and this challenge is the change of the government policies, which are not determined. They are unpredictable. So sometimes you leave yourself traveling on the right path, only that to wake up the next day and realize the benefits which you have worked so much to achieve have been watered down. For example, if you look at the VAT which has come into Kenya, initially all solar products in Kenya were tax exempted. But out of nowhere, of course, with a lot of the minimal involvement of stakeholders, the VAT came into play. So this means that the cost of implementation of renewable energy projects, basically from solar, is going to be very high. So as a government, of course, that is something which is not doing very well to the developers and investors. So that is one thing which maybe we don't know how it can be done, because it's more political issue. Of course, as developing countries, we have of resources. We may not have so much to invest in the areas which we would like to do. But then this faced with the economic challenges, and the government sometimes want also to raise the money, then they have to bring on board some of these issues we are having, like the case of Kenya. So in my own opinion, I believe the governments are doing something, only that the politics, if we take the politics and the government as separate issues, then you realize the politics is actually impacting us negatively. And this is happening in most of our countries. Even when it comes to development of infrastructure, a donor comes on board of a financial, and they come on board with particular requirements that you must meet. For example, they tell you invest in a particular kind of projects, while you know very well in your country's planning, you had prioritized a particular resource as a higher priority to develop your power generation plants. So sometimes you have to, move with these waves. Like in Kenya, we had a proposal. Of course, it has been brought down by the communities, and it has delayed to come on board. So I don't know how we need to look at that, but yes, I believe we are doing something.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to ask the same question to Nobenyo and Niraj, who may have a wider view on the entire African continent, but also maybe a more independent view. Let's start with Nobenyo. Do you think African governments are doing enough to attract foreign investors?
Yes, I mean, the answer to that question would be both a yes or a no. I think it will really depend on countries. I mean, of course, you have some countries that have been ahead and leading this quite more than other countries. But then it depends also on the priorities these countries have. And I mean, if you go beyond this whole current COVID situation we're looking into, then you will see that there are actually other priorities. But then, no, I think countries now will have to look into, I mean, as I was explaining earlier, in the finance part, I mean, we see that, quite a big share, 34% of investment in RE in Africa comes from the public sources, more than anywhere else. So that shows that, countries are actually putting some efforts. But then is it in the right direction? When it comes to regulation, or VAT taxes that you mentioned. Yes, some countries are doing enough, but some are not. But also, I think we need to look into our own markets, right? Because African markets by themselves, national markets, are relatively very small. Now, what governments are doing in order to create bigger markets and bigger through regional integration is something to look into as well. And to answer that question, because it can go into very many different aspects to clearly go into the detail. But then, yeah, some countries are doing quite a lot, and some might need to learn from others in the continent. Sorry.
Thank you. Niraj, same question to you. How's your perspective on this? And maybe what would be some of your recommendations to improve the situation?
No, I think, John, I would like to sum up what Nopenio and Engineer Nicholas actually mentioned there. So one of the biggest aspects that we see, for improvement of the situation currently in terms of private investment or private financing would be an improved level of transparency that we want to see in the system out here. So what I mean by transparency is transparency in terms of mandate, policies, as well as regulations, but also ensuring that since most of the projects, be it renewable energy or any private sector development when it comes to IPPs, is directly related to the utilities that operate locally, there is a greater need to have a transparent system of operation that will ensure, a certain level of creditworthiness that that can allow private investors to make that particular investment and ensure that they see a return on investment without many hiccups, as I would call it. So yes, as Nopenio rightly mentioned, certain countries are doing this. They are making efforts to ensure that private investment plays a bigger role in the renewable energy space in providing electricity access, but the majority of the countries still lack that policy conviction to actually ensure that private investment is a major aspect of the total development.
Thank you very much, Niraj. I'm just looking at the clock and I see that we have almost used all our time slot, but I would like to ask you, if that's okay with all of you, to ask you one last question, which has come back several times in the Q&A section. We all know that there is a lot of technology developments, very quick technology developments. The energy space is going digital more and more. And yes, I would like to know, summarizing the questions from the audience, how ready are national utilities to embark onto that digital adventure? And maybe also, what are the risks, but also what are the opportunities in doing so? I don't know. I mean, it's a broad question. I don't know who wants to tackle it first, but definitely a question of interest in today's technological situation. Nopenio, maybe I'm putting you on the spot again there. What are your views on the energy sector going digital in terms both of opportunities and risks?
Yeah, it's definitely an opportunity, especially when you look at it, try to look at it at both angles, from decentralized and grid connected. I mean, we have already seen some success going through innovation digitalization through pay-as-you-go, so especially in the off-grid sector, in the decentralized sector. But when you go to look at it from the grid connected area, it becomes more of not all utilities are ready, because I mean, when you look at development of some of our utilities, especially in West Africa, we talk about some that don't even have a proper grid code yet. I mean, so first of all, there are different levels of deployment. I mean, until some of those operational rules or procedures are clear, digitalization might actually be a burden. But then, for some of those more advanced ones, utilities, that could definitely represent a good opportunity. And especially now when we're talking about the West Africa power pool, we're talking about this opportunity for countries to actually trade electricity, Senegal buying electricity from Nigeria, or Sierra Leone buying one from Niger. If that comes as, for that to become a reality, digitalization will have to play a key role in that. So there is an opportunity there, but then there is this procedural risk that also exists, as not all utilities are at the same level of development at the moment. So that's my few cents on that.
Yeah, thank you. Engineer Mando, can you maybe tell us a little bit about the situation in Kenya about this digitalization topic from the Energy Commission point of view? How is this being approached? How is this being looked at?
Thank you very much. In Kenya, I think we are looking on how to share the resources, especially bearing in mind that most of these transmission lines have the OPGW cables, and this can be used to share the internet services. So we are using this as a platform. It's something which is under negotiation, and we're looking forward that it's going to enable us to access the internet services everywhere. And we're also looking at the smart metering systems. So these are things which are already taking place. The policies are there, and we have already done some tests in some areas with the major power consumers, just to see how it will be working with us. So I think also it's something we need to look at now that we are going to feed-in tariff in our country, although it's not so much operationalized. But if we can go digital, then it's much easier for us to have this information quite faster, easily, and it's much easier to plan on how to manage our system, maintain it, and the requirements and financing also for future expansions of the same based on the data which we can be acquiring through this digital platform. So I think it's something the Energy Regulatory Commission, which is now the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority of Kenya, is working to achieve together with the government. We are also doing this through the universal healthcare to ensure that as we provide the other services like electricity to some of these health facilities, we also having some digital network in these areas, and we can remotely check what is happening from the other side, because there has been issues of a lot of power theft, and I think this can be some of these losses actually can easily be traced when we have the digital platforms in our country. So I think it's something every government needs to consider.
Yes, thank you very much, Engineer Mando. And back to you, Niraj. Maybe more to finish on a positive note, really in terms of the opportunities of this digitalization. What are, in your opinion, the biggest opportunities? How can national utilities, but also private sector, really best benefit from all the technology that is currently already available?
No, I think just to add to what our esteemed panelists already mentioned, digitalization is one of the bigger opportunities that we see in the African continent. Yes, some of the utilities are moving towards that direction where there is a possibility of digitizing the grid, and some of the utilities need some amount of work to be done so that they can jump on the digitization bandwagon. But to put it plain and simple, I think one of the most important steps for digitalization in the African context would be looking at the metering aspect of things. Now, we see utilities lose a lot of revenue only because of electricity thefts, or for that matter, unpaid bills as well. So the first and foremost aspect for digitalization would be to ensure that utilities are able to recover the revenue for the amount of electricity and the effort that they are putting into supplying this electricity. So that would be the first step for digitalization. I think digitalization has a huge role to play in ensuring that utility losses are reduced to a minimum. So that would be my key take on utilities. But what I would like to just add on a very positive note, so Africa has always been an example. It is shown to the world as an example, as a region that leapfrogged fixed line connections and mobile connectivity bandwagon. So similarly, in terms of grids, Africa now has the opportunity to act and leapfrog the traditional connections and move towards a digitized system or a digitized grid. So yes, there is an opportunity, but there is certainly a requirement of effort on the part of the government and utilities as well.
Thank you very much, Neeraj. So I'm afraid this is going to be it for today. I mean, the topic was very, very wide and difficult to cover entirely in just one session, but I think we've had some very interesting insights today. I would like to take the opportunity to thank all the speakers. Thank you very much for your participation and time. Sorry about the few technical issues that we might have encountered at some points. But the good news is that within the next 24 hours, you will be receiving a personalized follow-up with details and a link to today's presentation. So you will be able to re-listen again. Also share this presentation and webinar with colleagues or friends of yours who were not able to attend. And also, I invite you to try to get in touch with our speakers today through different means and continue the conversation with them. Thank you for all of you who were joining us today. I would like to end by reminding that this webinar is copyright of Informa, and the presentation materials are owned and copyrighted by Informa Markets. And that each speaker was representing his own personal opinions. Once again, on behalf of our speakers and our guests, I would like to thank you for taking the time to listen to us today. And I look forward to hosting you again in a future webinar. Have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.